Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kagiyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering Community. And we're so happy to have an incredible speaker. We are honored to have Rochelle Prosser, who is an ICU trauma nurse and has been dealing with cancer with her family, her daughter, as well as her husband. And so I'd like to bring Rochelle on to share with us her story. And go ahead, Rochelle. Be sure to unmute yourself and share with us about who you are. And thank you for coming. It's an honor to have you.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good midday to everyone. Good evening if you're across the pond. Uh, it's a definite pleasure to be here again with this community, the cancer community. Always enjoy meeting all of you and learning from where you are. I was born in Canada, for those that are the Canadians on the call. I currently am a U.S. citizen and live in the United States. That's where I met the love of my life. We started having children, and before you knew it, cancer ended up landing at our doorstep. I'm a neural trauma ICU trained nurse of 30 years, but cancer is a whole different story when you are the one helping people go through their cancer journey, but now you have a loved one going through that. And it really took me aback and made me very surprised on how little I knew as a healthcare provider in the cancer space. And so for me, within a month's time, my 4-year-old and my 52-year-old husband was diagnosed at the same time, within about a month apart. And my daughter had an inoperable cancer. And so understanding really quickly how limited the choices were for my child who was at the dawn of her life, and then understanding the gravity of the situation of having to leave my husband behind to care for himself when he's in the dusk of his life or midlife, and both of them are terminal, both of them. But he had options. However, they put him on the wrong drugs, and we didn't know it. And so, because of my role being a healthcare provider, I was able to learn quickly about what he was taking, how it was working for other people, and how it was not going to work for him. And then having to negotiate on his behalf to make sure that he was put on the right medications in the first place before I could even leave the state with my daughter to go care for her, because the drug trial that they put us on that they figured would have worked 90% of the time, it failed her immediately. And we had to leave the state, which meant I had to choose which one of my family members I was going to help. And so I just don't want anyone to have to go through something like that. I don't think my worst enemy or the devil himself should have to go through something like that. And so, what I have done to make sense of it all is to try and help other people that are going through that journey so that they didn't have to go through the pitfalls that I had to learn quickly to navigate. And for myself, it took my daughter 11 years just to survive. So you can imagine the amount of financial strain it was on my family. I could no longer go to the bedside. The day that she was diagnosed was the last day I worked in any intensive care unit. So I had to change my my job, my role, who I saw myself, my whole career trajectory in an instant and immediately to protect both her and my husband so that they could survive. But on top of that, I was still getting seven-figure medical bills, and they came every 2 weeks. And I can assure you, I did not make seven figures. I still don't make seven figures. And so I had to figure it out real fast so that we had a roof to come home to after going through that journey and maintain that roof for the duration of her care, for the duration of my husband's care. And I don't know about you, when you got to try and figure out how to pay your bills while you are in cancer, which a lot of you on this call have had to go through, that's not an ideal situation. And it brings a lot of stress, heartache, and disruption to your mental health, disruption to your financial health, um, and can actually cause you to lose your job because if you're too sick to get up and get into the car, how are you going to get to work? And if you work in an industry that does not allow or accommodate remote work, you literally are looking at financial ruin. And so we had to figure it out really fast. And some of the things that I had to do, uh, the first thing everyone's going to do is raid your 401k. And I urge you, do not do that. Do not raid your pension. Do not raid your 403b. If you, how I did it, and I want to share that with you, there are a lot of resources out here from government agencies, foundations that will pay you a one and done, as I call it. They'll take care of a portion of your mortgage, and you have to do multiple applications to have the full cost of your mortgage or your rent to be paid. But then what happens next month? A lot of these, you can only go to that well once. So you have to look at your financial health, really look at it realistically. So you have a nest egg. If you work for a company that allows you to buy stock in your own company, I urge you to do it. I urge you to maximize it as much as you can. And when you have your withdrawal periods, it's usually twice a year. Take the interest off of what you've put in. Sell that and then pay yourself back 6% on the dollar and pay yourself back. Not only will you pay back the interest that you took, you'll actually end up buying more of that stock at the next drop. So you never vacate your principal balance. You never vacate your principal balance on your 401k. And you use that stock to, again, give you back a higher rate of return. So if you follow the rules of 7 with investment, you're actually paying yourself higher rate of return than what the actual bank or the stock market will actually give you. And you're always giving yourself 6% higher than what that rate of return is. So you end up making 18 to 24%, where the average Joe Blow is making 12 and 6%. So you continue to increase your bottom line, you continue to increase your stock purchase, you make your stock more valuable, and it pads you for the next time that you have to access your stock portfolio so that you can pay your bills. And you never raid your principal amount. Yes. So before I say anything else, did anyone have any questions on what I just said? And I'm going to take my glasses off so I could see. This is what you need to do now because the NIH is no longer funding anything. They're not funding. They're not funding clinical trials. They're not funding hospitals. They're just not funding people. So if you are lucky enough to be on the other side of cancer survivorship, thank God. God bless you. If you're in the thick of it, the throes of it, at any time, you might actually lose your funding. So you need to follow this principle. And if you haven't gotten into your clinical trial or study, do not be despaired. Do not be despaired. There are clinical researchers called principal investigators. A lot of them have been laid off, and they probably are working on the clinical trial or the drug development that you're actually wanting to use right now. If you can find what their name is, it's usually listed there. If you go to clinicaltrials.gov, don't recommend it. Contact me. I'll help you find out who they are. And I have the Rolodex of most of the principal investigators at the NIH anyways. So, just reach out and contact me. We'll find a way to connect you to them. At this point, they still want to do the work. They still want to help. They still want to be involved. So they will help you gain access or transfer you to that facility that is actually doing the trial, the drug, the humanitarian use. And they will connect you to those people. If they don't, they'll probably do it for free. You know why? Because they love science and they love what they do and they want to help. So if you can contact the principal investigator, they can at least get you the credential to see what you need and then connected to the next individual or facility so that you can continue the trial. They may even continue to do it for free. So I heard a little bit from Jamie um, looking at philanthropic donation. I 1000% agree with you. We as patients have value. We as survivors have insight, and we're alive. We have a pulse. We're human beings. Cancer doesn't care who you love, what you look like, how much money you will have, you know, how many cars you have in the yard, how many boats you got in the ocean, or if you only can rub two pennies together and homeless, it doesn't care. It will take you out. And right now, most of us know somebody, if it's not ourselves, that have cancer. It's our mother, our sister, our father, grandparent, child, co-worker, neighbor next door, the man across the street, the person in the grocery store that you don't even know. We all have been touched by this. And if we come as a unifying voice right now, where there is a vacuum of science, of data acclamation, of trials, of indicating of use, they have to spend this money. The pharmaceutical companies need to know how these drugs are working. We, as as a group, have a powerful voice to say, okay, since the government isn't going to do it for us, let us come together as individual groups of patients together, like a union, if you want to say, let's be a cancer union, if you're not averse to that, and say, this is the cancers that we have together. If you will pay for our drugs and continue to fund us individually, in turn, we will give you what is happening to us, the data that's happening to us, our the side effects that we're feeling, how great we're feeling, how worse we're feeling. We will give you this information that you need to be able to make better drugs, to be able to catalog and help others. You're absolutely right. We have a voice and we have power in doing that. And that's what we absolutely should be doing as a group together. Um, Life doesn't stop. Cancer treatment doesn't stop just because someone says, okay, well, we're not going to fund it today. Uh, People are still dying. And we as a group can come together and do something about it. For me, it was more important to provide a way for my husband and my daughter as she grew up to be able to make sense of what happened to them, to be able to communicate with their doctor so that they understood what's going on, to foster those moments of communication so that somebody else doesn't have to go through this. It was more important for me to make sense of that and to find the that process. What is it that patients need to do to avoid dying from cancer if we can, or at least learn to live with quality and dignity in that gap? It's more important for me to do that and understand why it took 11 years to heal one individual than it was for me to throw my hands up and say, okay, well, they survived, let me move on. So I will tell you what I learned. And what that was three things: knowledge, access, and healthcare system navigation. If you had all three of those things, you were more likely to live long enough so that medical science could catch up to you and you could find a cure, or you lived longer with quality and dignity in your cancer journey because it didn't hurt you as bad. You found ways to deal with the throes of your illness, and maybe also you were able to find alternatives in your diet or in other science advancements that allowed you to live with quality. And that's the most important thing, right? It's not it's not the fact that we have a terminal diagnosis. It's the lack of control and the ability to have dignity and humanity as we go through that journey. That's the thing. That's the linchpin that makes the journey either we want to live or we just throw our hands up and say, forget it, peace out. And too many of us are piecing out when there actually can be truth and healing in this journey, whether it's mentally, whether it's finding that quality, or whether it's fixing our financial resources while we go through that journey. So, so this is me. This is who I am, and this is my journey in cancer. So I'll open it up to questions. Again, try to see all of you because the sun is up here.
Rochelle, if you could share what you were going through personally uh,
Oh.
in dealing with your daughter's
Mhm,
cancer and your husband's cancer and the
mhm.
choices that you had to make as a result of both of those situations. I mean, I wouldn't wish that situation on anyone. And I mean, I bow down to you for having to deal with it and coming out the back end in such a beautiful way. So if you could share that with us, that'd be great.
Well, the first the first thing I had to deal with was finding a provider who was actually going to treat my daughter. Unfortunately, imagine looking at your 4-year-old child. If anyone knows how big a 40-year-old child is, they're very small. And the cancer was about 14 centimeters. That's bigger than a softball, a little bit smaller than a soccer ball. And if you look at a child's head, it's about as big as a soccer ball, maybe a little bit smaller. So her cancer was the whole of her head, pretty much. And then it was everywhere else in her body, down her spine. So she wasn't even supposed to make it out of the hospital. So the biggest hurdle that I had to do was stop my career in nursing and take care of my family and try to figure it out financially how I was going to do that without having to liquidate everything that I owned uh, and and all that we had. Because as I said, those seven-figure bills came every 2 weeks like clockwork. It was like taxes and bills, and so I could have sold everything that I had and maybe came to the tip of the iceberg of paying one of the bills. But then what do you do after that? And you've liquidated everything. So that was one of the biggest hurdle. The second hurdle was maintaining a marriage when you didn't know if that person was still going to be there after you went through all that you're going through. That was very hard because my husband was not only dealing with his own life expectancy and a sudden change in that, but now it's his child. And he had his own values and beliefs of when something hurts you, cut it off according to the Bible. But understanding what's going on with my child, you cannot cut your brainstem off. You cannot cut that amount of brain out of you and think that you're still going to live. So we actually had a very different views on how, or our expectations on how our daughter was going to be treated, which did not coincide with each other. So you can imagine that dynamic in there and trying to keep a marriage and find the love as you're going through that under tremendous adversity. The final thing was we had other children. We had two older children. And the first time that I traveled with our youngest child, I had to bring the older two children with us. And it's like you're saying to your children, okay, we're all going to go. And we don't know if we're coming back with the child that we have. Am I coming back with three kids? Is their brother and sister going to come back with their sister? Or is it, are we all three of us, all three children coming home? And is daddy going to be there? Is my husband going to be there when I get back? You know, it chokes me up to this day, still dealing with that. And it took a lot to be able to work through and be able to have just this calm conversation about it. It took years. You know, my husband and I we've been together for almost, we're going on our 26th year together. And I was quite young at the time with very young children and understanding I was going to be a single mom. And I could be a single mom of two, or I could be a single mom of three. It just depended on how Kayla lived or how my husband lived, you know, and trying to hold that together, trying to continue to maintain my career, to advance in my career, and to ensure that we had something to come back to, dealing with the isolation, because we didn't just go to Tennessee, we went up to New York. We went to almost every hospital on the 75, 95, 72, 71, 20, 40, 65, 85. And I don't know about you, we were even on the 305 in California for a little while there too. Okay. So we did something what I coined as cancer travel tourism, where if your state doesn't have what you need, you have to leave. You have to use the tools that you have and the funding that you have at your local and municipal level, or the funding that you have within your insurance, to leave the state to go where your provider was. And in my case, it wasn't just 200 miles down the street. It was almost 2,000 miles away. And we had to stay there for months. So how do you keep a profession? How do you stay employed having to do all of those things, as well as care for your children, care for your family, care for yourself? That's a lot. And sometimes it got so much, I just couldn't even talk. I couldn't even pray because 24 hours was too damn long. But what I could do was look at the situation at hand and deal with the situation. And it's not necessarily the situation, because it's rough, it's tough. It's how you, as that individual, deal with the situation and navigate through that situation. And what I found was if I could take the time and make my daughter laugh, make my husband laugh at least one time a day, and I'm not talking about a little hee hee, a smirk, I mean belly laugh, then I've done my job. I've done what I was hired, what I was doing. It allowed them a moment to just be human and just live. And if you do that long enough, you can look back through your journey and string all of those happy moments together, and you will find joy. But you also need to give yourself grace and you need to give yourself dignity because you only can do and make decisions based on what's in front of you. So if you look in that toolbox and you need wallpaper, but all you got is paste, well, go buy a newspaper and paste it up. Do you get some crayons out and put some fluffy flowers on it, make hay while the sun shines. And if you do that long enough, you will find joy and acceptance. And it's okay that you didn't get it right. Just give yourself some grace.
Rochelle, I mean, you have such an incredible story. The thought that has crossed my mind is how did you take care of yourself while all of this is going on? I mean, you're always talking about your husband and your family and your daughter, but I mean, this whole thing, you're going through it as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Along the way, I apologize for the background. I'm in a training right now. Along the way, I ended up meeting some amazing parents, spouses, husbands, but most importantly, one of them took me under their wing and they said, um, I need you to come to a meeting. And I'm like, what do you mean I need to come to a meeting? I got a kid here. I got vomit to clean up. I got meds to give. I've got homework to do. I've got life to live. I don't have time to go to a meeting and sit down. And they said, um, yeah, you need to come to this meeting. You really need to come to this meeting. Be there at 6:30. And they gave me the address. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to this meeting. Really, I don't have time. I just don't have time. But then my kids came up to me and they said, Mom, you don't smile as much as you used to. What happened to that other mom? Oh, I just love you. And they started giving me more hugs than what I normally would have. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's see what this is there. And so that community was Gilda's Club. And we went there and we just sat down and just broke bread together. What I didn't realize is that every person to the left and the right of me while I'm at that table was somebody's spouse, it was somebody's sister, it was somebody's brother, aunt, uncle, sibling, or the patient themselves. And just taking that moment to just sit and talk about nonsense and break bread, it just made life less heavy. It just made life less heavy, especially when you're dealing with isolation because you can't go everywhere. You can't go to the movie theater. You can't take a bus. You can't take an airplane. You can't go on a train because you might, bring something home to your family member, or that person is too immune compromised to go with you to travel somewhere. So you're just you and them stuck in that car. And sometimes, even now, sitting out here, it's beautiful. It's beautiful out here. It's just to show you what it looks like, you know? And just taking a moment, 5 minutes, to just be in the sun and feel the warmth on your skin. Not everyone can do that, but it gives you a rush of vitamin D, which then brings vitamin C, which helps your heart to beat stronger, which is good for the skin. It bathes the skin in vitamin A, all of these things. just taking a moment in time for yourself actually does is some of the self-help that I do now. But it took that one individual that was going for group therapy to say, hey, you need some help. And it was after I went there, I realized, yeah, I do. I do need it. So I've been a member of Gilda's Club for about 12 years now. And Gilda's Club is actually everywhere. They're like the post office. You know that song, I've been everywhere, man. I've been every Johnny Cash. They followed me to New York. There was a meeting there. I could not go to the meeting. The people came to me with the plate of cookies. Did I need it? No, but I ate every last one of them. I sure did. I sure did. They were great. It just gave me a sense of peace to know that no matter where I was in the country, there was somebody else ready to receive me, welcome me in, and show me community and kindness that a lot of times I didn't deserve. I didn't deserve it, but I am very grateful for it. So we're all part of a community that nobody wants to be part of in cancer. But once you come together and meet each other and hear the stories and see what it is that you can take away, you don't have to take away all. You don't even have to agree with it all. But just coming in as a community, you're so grateful to know that you're not alone. You're so grateful to know that there's somebody there thinking about you. And that's it.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Rochelle? I mean, we really appreciate you. I love your passion and your sharing willingly about your family. Anybody have any questions or comments for Rochelle? Go ahead, Georges.
Thank you so much, Rochelle, for sharing such an amazing, courageous story. You're a
Thank
hero,
you.
and it is great. It goes along with what Jamie was saying. You know, as community. In my case, I fought the disease for 10 years, and I had 10 surgeries, craniotomies, and
Oh,
everybody was asking my wife about me, but nobody asked her about her. And we have 5 young
mm,
children at the time. And
mhm,
you know, the whole theme of the caregiver, it's so underestimated. And so I commend you for that and your strength. I'm sure you had this huge Lord inside of you as well to keep you going.
mhm.
So congratulations and God bless you.
Thank you. You know, I I often would be told, "Oh, you're such a great caregiver." But when you're the spouse of somebody going through cancer, I think that's the wrong term because, especially in my case, uh, being a nurse, it's expected that you're supposed to know everything. And I equate it to being the day you bring your first child home from the hospital and that kid goes to screaming for 9 months straight, like one of my children did. there's no there's no magical book. You know, the Dr. Spock doesn't work. You know, there's no menu that goes or manual that goes with that. And we often forget that as spouses or as family members that if you have a little bit of an education, it can be a dangerous thing because people forget that we have feelings too. We're going through it with them too. We're dealing with mental health issues too. And they just figure, oh, I'm just going to pray for them because they've got it all figured out. No, they don't have it all figured out. Tell me one doctor that you met in oncology that had all the answers and all the sense. We don't. As a matter of fact, we're probably going through it with you. We're just not telling you. And so, what we don't want to do is give you something that's going to hurt you. We don't want to give you something that's going to make things worse. So, when you come with that list that you went to Dr. Google and said, I need this, I got to try this, I got to go with this, and we look at it, well, oh my goodness, you have you have bone cancer, and this is something for the liver. This is not actually going to work for you. I can't give this to you. And now we have crushed you to your core because that was the one thing that you were holding on to, thinking that if I get that magic bullet, it'll knock it all the way out. That doesn't happen. That's not normally how cancer goes. It's a real journey, and it is hard, it's long, and it is fraught with pitfalls, potholes, rainy days, and hardship. But the thing that I look at through the journey is if you know what questions to ask or can find somebody that can guide you through that process to help you to learn your voice and advocacy, you're going to go through three things. You're going to be in the depths of despair and fear because you found out that you're terminally ill, and there may or may not be a cure, or you've got to travel thousands of miles to get it, or that healthcare provider is not right down the street specializing in this area. So you're going to have a lot of despair. Then you're going to find hope because there's something that you can hold on to, and you don't know what questions to ask, so you're just going to go for it. You're just going to take it. You're going to follow everything that they say. The third thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to get mad. Raise your hand if you didn't get mad in your journey. Did you get mad at your journey? You got mad as the hatter. You know why? Because you realize your provider doesn't know everything. And how could they? You realize that you're going to have to take a drug or a pill or radiation, that you're going to have to trade something of yourself for that survival, because you never go through cancer unscathed. You never do. I don't care if it's you, the person, or you, the caregiver. So I call it caretaking. I call it caretaking. I didn't have the ability or was afforded the ability to just be a spouse, to just be a mom. I had to look from afar, make decisions, and be supportive from afar because I'm not in it. I'm adjacent to it. I can't talk specifically to it, but I can sit with two eyes and watch this hellscape that's in front of me or this beautiful thing that it turns into. But yeah, you're going to get mad because you're going to sit there and say, how the fuck did I get here? Why me? Why did they choose me? And it was one of my colleague providers that said to me, Rochelle, you've been a neural trauma ICU nurse for 30 years. Why not you? Why wouldn't you be that person? You're in, you're in a whole different field here. You're in the realm of experimental. Who experiments on their kid? Put your toe in that parent's shoes before you open your mouth and respond. They're making the worst decision of their life because they want their loved one to live. And that's the only way. That's the only way. They're going to roll the dice because 50% chance that it might work versus 90% chance it's not on the other side. That's some hell of a odds. But that's the opportunity that was given to me from both of my family members. And so I think about things before I speak. I try not to have too much empathy because it will put me in a fetal position in the closet, thinking about and loving and praying on those that are coming after me and wishing for the best. But I'm very scientifically inclined. I'm a data scientist. Uh, so I look at the evidence and then ask a lot of questions. And it's okay to have a lot of questions. If you can get two or three of them answered, you're doing good. Most times you won't. But eventually, you will get the answers that you seek. It's caretaking.
Amy, did you have a question or a comment for Rochelle?
Powerful, powerful story. One of the things that just jumped out at me, and I don't know if it'll have any relevance here or not. When you were talking, Rochelle, a little bit about the financial aspects and how to at best deal with your finances, one of the things I would throw out here to anybody that may have some assets or assets to the tune where you're concerned about the cost of cancer and losing the assets you have. One of the things I would highly recommend is talk to an attorney
Mm-hmm.
and set up a trust. And there are numerous types of trusts that you can set up. In effect, you can protect all your assets
Yep.
so that if you find yourself in a situation whereby you're looking at bills of tens of thousands of dollars, if you have assets, you're going to quickly see that a hospital system will become heartless. They're going to
Yep.
want their money
Yep.
and they'll go after you to get it. And what they can't do is go after you if your assets are tied up in a trust.
Mm-hmm.
And trust typically can be expensive. It all
Mm-hmm.
depends on the attorney, the amount of your assets, what kind of trust you set up, that sort of thing. But it's always worth, if you have several $100,000 on up, it's worth the time it takes. Talk to an attorney, set up. And again, there are several kinds of trusts you can do,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but look into it and you can protect all your assets.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the hospital system still has to take care of you. And
That's right.
this way you can circumvent losing your assets to
Mm-hmm.
pay the bills that they're heartless about collecting.
And to add to what you're saying, Jamie, as a certified legal nurse consultant, I can help those that are dealing with those medical bill decisions to make sure that they don't bill you to the point of obscurity. You know, the other thing that I have access to is some resources for those that actually review the medical bills, like I do, to make sure that you're not being overcharged and allow and negotiate on your behalf so those bills are reduced to the lowest common denominator, which is Medicaid rates. Medicaid is for anyone from birth to 64 and a quarter years old. Medicare is when you're 64 and a half years old to your death. So under Medicaid rates, those are reimbursed at a much lower rate than self-pay. And sometimes self-pay, depending on the facility and their charitable giving status as a foundation, those rates can be even lower. So there are entities that I'm connected to that will review your bills and make sure your money stays where it needs to be, which is with you to take care of your costs. So I urge you, anyone on this call, if you have outstanding medical bills that you cannot pay, please contact me, connect with me. I will connect you with the individual and we'll get them reviewed and get them settled so that you don't have to have that over your head. There's, it should not be that you are terminally ill and you have such financial overhead that you're financially ruined. It's wrong. It's immoral. It should not be happening. And there's a lot that can be done.
Question, Rochelle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had, like I think we all have running medical bills and things like that. A
Send them to me.
situation,
Send
I
them to me.
will, I
Yeah,
will. I
it doesn't matter how old they are. I'm telling you, if your bills are from 10 years ago, send them to me. Don't not send them to me. I can take care of them.
okay. What I had was, like 2 years after I had the procedure, what happened is the insurance companies came back and reviewed the uh what they paid, And then they came back 2 years later and said, you got to pay more. I'm like, what? I mean,
Yeah.
wh-
Hmm.
what do you do in that situation?
You call me. You pick up the phone. You
Okay.
you pick up the phone, physically pick up the phone and say, Rochelle, what's your email? What can I just take a screenshot of this bill? I need to send this to you, and you send it to me.
All
And
right.
that's it. And you probably might end up paying $500, something like that. And next thing you
Wow.
know, a few months later, you haven't heard from me, and you're just like, Rochelle, what happened? I'm like, don't worry about it. Enjoy your life.
Yeah. See, that's a great thing about people such as Rochelle is, if you could learn one thing, and I just learned one great thing, you know, it can, it can change things for you. And
Mhm.
so you don't know, all of a sudden somebody says something, even though you may think it's small at the time, but no, thank you, Rochelle. That's a great thing.
You're
And
very welcome. Very welcome.
yeah, in fact, you'll be hearing from me about that.
All
So,
right. Okay. I will be happy to help.
oh,
Happy to
thank you
help.
so much.
My
Anybody else
pleasure.
have questions for Rochelle or comments? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Thomas.
right. First of all, I want to thank you for very knowledgeable, like Mark just said, and what you said in the beginning. Knowledge and access really makes all the difference.
Hmm.
Like that two of the three. And what I want to just, you have an extraordinary mindset, and your attitude is amazing. Your family is absolutely. I'm sure you've been blessing one another throughout the years and for all time. I just want to share a couple things I just thought of while listening to you and hearing you. First of all, like even on what Mark just said, I have Thomas Edison in the background there. He's like my best friend. I had
Hmm.
my former Airedale Terrier who passed on 4 years ago. His name was Edison,
There you
Thomas,
go.
and he's Edison. And one of
Hmm.
the things Thomas Edison said was that ideas come from out of space. That
That's
might be
right.
hard to believe, but it is true. And I
Hmm.
should know ideas come from out of space. And I'm sure we
Yes.
would all agree he had what 1,097 inventions, patents, and inventions. But another thing I want to share is that I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Bernie Siegel. He's a retired pediatric neurosurgeon now. But
Yes.
what he said, he used to conduct seminars and workshops, and he said whenever a patient was like he got a prognosis, like a death sentence, so to speak. He said what I would recommend from now on, what I recommend doing is you go to that doctor and you say, I have $10,000. I'm writing you a $10,000 check. Here it is. You put your $10,000 up and you tell me I have 6 months to live or a year to live. And he says no doctor would ever take that bet. They will
Nope.
not take your
Nope.
money because they
Nope.
don't know. I mean, well, they're telling
Mm-mm.
you and they're planting that's in your consciousness, in your heart and soul. So that's why having an extraordinary mindset and belief system, as well as everything else, make sure you're in like the right community really truly makes all the difference.
Hmm.
And you're absolutely right. There's no magic books, but there are books that can help and add to our being. One of the ones I love a lot greatly. It's called. Actually shared it with Mark. The Magic of Believing by
Hmm.
Claude Bristol. It's all about belief, and like in every religion ever, like the one key ingredient is belief.
Hmm.
Because whatever we believe is true, good, bad, or indifferent. So we get to continuing to develop our belief, our mindset, our attitude. And thank you for your contribution, Rochelle. And thanks for everything that you shared. You're amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I cannot follow that. That is righteous right there. I can't follow you, Thomas. That is amazing. I truly believe that. And I am over my time. They're sending me texts and calling me here to call me back into training. But I urge you, if you have questions, sometimes sitting still will help ease the burden of what you're needing to do. But you need to move, you need to have action. And one of those actions would be contact myself, contact Mark. If you have questions after this, uh, don't hesitate to give me a call. It might be just one simple thing that makes a difference and turns the tide in what you're going through. It may not be curative, but at least you can find quality and peace in your journey. So I wish all of you well. Thank you so much for having me here and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you,
Oh,
Rochelle.
thanks
Thank
You're
you.
so much,
Thank you,
amazing.
Rochelle.
Rochelle.
It's
You're
been
You're
up.
an honor to
amazing.
have you. And what we're going to
My
do is
God.
we're going to close off this recording. Thank you, Rochelle, and then we'll continue.